The Crusades, the war between Christian and Muslim powers. The Crusades, spanning the late 11th to the 13th century, represent one of the most significant confrontations between Christian and Muslim powers in medieval history. These campaigns were a fusion of religious fervor, military ambition, and political maneuvering. While their stated goal was the recovery of Jerusalem and the Holy Land, the Crusades also became a theater for the broader struggle between two of the world's great civilizations. At the heart of the conflict were two competing worldviews: Christendom, led by the Catholic Church and European monarchies, and the Islamic world, unified under various caliphates, sultanates, and emirates. This clash of civilizations was marked by profound cultural, ideological, and military encounters, leaving a legacy that shaped East-West relations for centuries. The origins of the conflict. The roots of the Crusades lay in the growing tension between Christian Europe and the Islamic Middle East. By the 11th century, the Islamic world had expanded significantly, encompassing territories in the Middle East, North Africa, and the Iberian Peninsula. Meanwhile, Europe, having emerged from the so-called Dark Ages, was experiencing a resurgence of religious zeal and a desire for territorial expansion. The Seljuk Turks and the Byzantine Empire. The immediate catalyst for the Crusades was the Seljuk Turks' expansion into Anatolia and their defeat of the Byzantine army at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. This loss weakened the Byzantine Empire and prompted Emperor Alexios I Komnenos to seek help from the West. His plea for assistance was answered by Pope Urban II, who saw an opportunity to unite Christendom under a common cause. Pope Urban II's call to arms. At the Council of Clermont in 1095, Pope Urban II delivered a rousing sermon, calling on the knights and nobles of Europe to take up arms and liberate Jerusalem. Urban framed the crusade as a holy mission, promising spiritual rewards, including the remission of sins, to those who participated. This call to arms galvanized thousands, leading to the launch of the First Crusade. The First Crusade, initial successes and Christian triumph. The First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, was marked by remarkable success for the Crusaders, despite their lack of cohesion and logistical challenges. The campaign attracted a diverse array of participants, from seasoned knights to untrained peasants, united by their desire to reclaim the Holy Land. The capture of Jerusalem. After arduous battles and sieges, the Crusaders achieved their ultimate goal in 1099 with the capture of Jerusalem. The victory was accompanied by a brutal massacre of the city's Muslim and Jewish inhabitants, an act that shocked the Islamic world and set the tone for future animosity. The Crusaders established several states in the region, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem, which served as Christian strongholds in the heart of the Muslim world. The Islamic response. The First Crusade caught the Islamic world off guard. Divisions among Muslim rulers, particularly between the Sunni Seljuks and the Shia Fatimids, hindered a coordinated response. However, this initial disunity would not last, as the Muslim world began to recognize the threat posed by the Crusaders. The counteroffensive. Islamic unity under Saladin. The rise of Saladin, Salah ad-Din, in the 12th century marked a turning point in the conflict between Christian and Muslim powers. A Kurdish general and statesman, Saladin united Muslim forces under his leadership, creating a powerful coalition that spanned Egypt, Syria, and parts of Mesopotamia. The Battle of Hattin and the fall of Jerusalem. In 1187, Saladin achieved a decisive victory at the Battle of Hattin, where his forces annihilated the Crusader army and captured key Christian leaders. This victory paved the way for the recapture of Jerusalem, a moment of immense significance for the Muslim world. Unlike the Crusaders' earlier sack of the city, Saladin's conquest was marked by relative mercy, as he allowed Christian inhabitants to leave peacefully. The Third Crusade, the Clash of Titans. The fall of Jerusalem prompted the launch of the Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192. Led by European monarchs such as Richard the Lionheart, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa. This campaign saw epic battles between Richard and Saladin, including the Siege of Acre and the Battle of Arsuf. While the Crusaders achieved some victories, they were unable to recapture Jerusalem. The conflict ended with a treaty that allowed Christian pilgrims to access the holy sites, reflecting a grudging respect between the two leaders. The shifting balance of power. As the Crusades progressed, the balance of power between Christian and Muslim forces shifted. The Crusaders' initial momentum was gradually eroded by the resilience and adaptability of their Muslim adversaries. The rise of the Mamluks. The Mamluks, a dynasty of former slave soldiers, emerged as a dominant force in the Islamic world during the later Crusades. Under leaders such as Baybars and Calawin, the Mamluks systematically dismantled the remaining Crusader states, culminating in the fall of Acre in 1291. This defeat marked the end of the Crusader presence in the Holy Land. Decline of European unity. While the Islamic world was consolidating its power, Europe was plagued by internal divisions. The political rivalries between European monarchs, combined with the waning enthusiasm for crusading, weakened the Christian effort. The diversion of the Fourth Crusade to Constantinople further undermined the unity of Christendom, creating lasting tensions between Catholic and Orthodox Christians. Cultural and religious exchange. Despite the violence and animosity, the Crusades were also a period of cultural and intellectual exchange between Christian and Muslim civilizations. Trade and commerce. The Crusades facilitated the expansion of trade networks between Europe and the Middle East. European merchants gained access to luxury goods such as spices, silk, and glassware, while Middle Eastern markets benefited from European commodities. Cities like Venice and Genoa thrived as intermediaries, becoming hubs of commerce and cultural exchange. Knowledge and learning. The Crusades exposed Europeans to the scientific and philosophical achievements of the Islamic world. Through contact with Muslim scholars, Europeans rediscovered the works of Aristotle, Ptolemy, and other classical thinkers, as well as advancements in medicine, mathematics, and astronomy. This intellectual exchange laid the groundwork for the European Renaissance. The legacy of the Crusades. The Crusades left a lasting legacy that shaped the course of history in both the Christian and Muslim worlds. Religious polarization. The Crusades deepened the divide between Christianity and Islam, fostering a legacy of mistrust and hostility that persists in some forms to this day. They also reinforced the concept of holy war in both traditions, influencing later conflicts and ideological struggles. The decline of feudalism. The Crusades contributed to the decline of feudalism in Europe, as monarchs consolidated power and centralized their states. The need to fund and organize the campaigns also spurred the development of taxation systems and the rise of urban economies. Cultural synthesis. Despite the conflict, the Crusades were a period of profound cultural synthesis. The exchange of ideas, technologies, and goods enriched both civilizations, demonstrating the complex interplay of war and diplomacy. Enduring consequences of the Crusades. The Crusades were far more than a medieval clash between Christianity and Islam. Their repercussions echoed across centuries, shaping the socio-political and cultural landscapes of both the East and the West. From fostering European colonial ambitions to influencing interfaith relations, the Crusades catalyzed profound changes that continue to resonate in modern times. Political transformations in Europe. The Crusades contributed significantly to the transformation of European political structures, shifting power dynamics and laying the groundwork for the centralized states that would define the early modern era. The decline of feudalism. The Crusades disrupted the feudal system by undermining the power of local lords and redistributing wealth to monarchs and urban elites. Many nobles mortgaged or sold their lands to finance their participation in the Crusades, often transferring control of these lands to the crown. As a result, monarchs like those in France and England strengthened their centralized authority, diminishing the influence of feudal barons. Emergence of nation-states. The Crusades also encouraged the development of national identities, as kings rallied their subjects under unified banners for the cause of Christendom. This sense of shared purpose contributed to the consolidation of nascent nation-states, particularly in Western Europe. Diplomatic shifts. The prolonged interactions between European and Middle Eastern powers during the Crusades laid the foundation for new forms of diplomacy. Treaties like the one negotiated by Richard the Lionheart and Saladin during the Third Crusade demonstrated that even in the midst of religious conflict, mutual respect and pragmatic agreements were possible. These early examples of cross-cultural diplomacy would influence later interactions between Christian and Muslim states. Impact on the Islamic world. The Crusades also left a lasting imprint on the Islamic world, shaping its political landscape and perceptions of the West. Unification under Islamic leaders. The initial shock of the First Crusade spurred greater unity among Muslim factions. Leaders like Saladin and the Mamluk sultans forged coalitions that transcended local rivalries, enabling them to effectively counter the Crusaders. This unity, however, was often temporary and contingent upon external threats, as internal divisions within the Islamic world persisted long after the Crusades ended.